Okay, welcome to episode 7 of Tapped In. I'm Anna Summersett here with Benson Varghese, managing partner of Varghese Summersett. Today we're talking about New Year, New You, New Year's resolutions. So I don't know if you have any, but the idea to start here is that a New Year's resolution doesn't require necessarily something new for you without first starting with where have you been, right? So I want to do a little bit of like retrospection and talk about the past year, because a new version of you first requires you to be honest with who you are and how you got to where you are. So we want to talk about where you've been over the past year. And we'll start with what worked last year that you're not giving yourself enough credit for.
I probably don't give myself enough credit for what we've done with Loft, specifically because to some extent I'm a perfectionist with it, right? There have been moments in time where we could have opened the doors and made it publicly available. And because to some extent I'm chasing a perfect product, and because I'm self-funded and no one else is telling me to.
Nobody else is telling you what to do or how to, you got to get this to market to start making money on it.
Exactly. So there's, some hesitation to give myself any credit for how far we've come because it's not publicly available yet. And for me, that really means I want the public to give us feedback as opposed to the almost 100 users that we have internally using it. What does the general public think? What do lawyers think? And I'm really excited to reach that milestone. And despite that, I should appreciate how far we've come, because we've come really far. It started as a product that was built for our personal injury team. We expanded it to the other units. We've rolled it out to all the units. And so far, it's been really great.
Well, I mean, to that end, I think you've learned a lot of lessons in working through some of the challenges with developing a software and really a secondary business to your already successful law firm. So what were some lessons you learned through the development of Loft that you don't want to repeat the hard way this year?
Yeah, we've had a couple of lessons through the development. One lesson is, how am I most helpful to the development team? And over the course of time, my role has changed. And certainly through this process, I've become more familiar with what the developers do on a day-to-day basis, but I'm not a coder myself. And so being able to utilize my time in a meaningful way for the development team has been one aspect of it, right? You could spend your entire day chasing down bugs, or you could focus on what's moving the needle the most for the most number of people. The other thing.
Well, and really that reflection of what you just said there, which is not focusing on every little bug, but focusing on what's moving the needle for the most people, that reflection isn't identifying a weakness, it's really identifying a strategy.
No, absolutely. And it's one that applies both to the law firm and to what I'm doing with Loft, which is, as a leader, you set the pace for your organization, you set the trajectory, and those things are important. You have to delegate and you have to trust the leaders that you've put in place to run their teams. And we've gotten much better about that here at the firm. And certainly that's what a lot of last year was for Loft.
Well, and that kind of pivots into our next point, which is we've discussed some of the things you did well last year that you didn't give yourself enough credit for. But let's also discuss ways in which we're misaligned maybe last year that you no longer want to tolerate in the new year, meaning that progress isn't always about adding more things. It can be identifying things that no longer fit and removing those, from your ecosystem, from your structure. So what are some things that you tolerated last year that in the new year you're no longer going to tolerate?
One of the things that we've done at the end of the year is really transition out of the leeway we were giving to certain people. And what I mean by that is, when we identify an issue, our default is to almost always find a pathway forward for that person, right?
Rehabilitation of some sort.
Rehabilitation of some sort, meaning they're here for a reason, right? They got through our interview process. We believe they're good people, and we try to find a way to make that work. Almost to a fault, though, right?
You mean at some point you feel like they're taking advantage of the process of the attempts to rehabilitate? What do you mean by that?
Well, there's this adage that you should hire slowly and fire fast. And we tend to not fire fast because we're looking to see if that person can pivot into a new role, if there's a better place for that person. But it does create some tolerance. And you have to start asking yourself, am I tolerating too much? What does that tell the people?
What's the cost of the tolerance?
Right. And what is that telling the people who are working really hard, doing all the things that you expect them to do? So we kind of have talked about 2026, I know I'm jumping ahead, as being a year of accountability.
Yeah.
And when we use that phrase, accountability in the firm, it's not that the metrics have changed. It's that we're going to be communicating with you better. And we're going to be having that discussion much earlier. So instead of this being a 4-month process of seeing if you can rise to the occasion or we have a better position, maybe now it's a 6-week process.
So it seems like you are identifying some areas where you kind of habitually were responding or behaving in a certain way that you now want to act with intentionality.
Intentionality and a little more speed.
So what would be an example of that?
Well, let's say someone's not performing in their position. To first identify that quickly. And so we're talking to our division leads about the need for essentially constant communication. You need to know what a person's caseload is, where they're doing well, where they're not doing so well, and address it ideally on a weekly basis, right? And if on a weekly basis it's not being solved, then certainly by the point it gets to a month and you've been addressing this, it now needs to come to our attention as owners so that we can say, hey, we've got to have a plan to work this out, or it's not working and we need to make a change. Whereas in the past, it was a slower pace to get there.
Do you think to any extent there have been areas within your firm that we've misidentified busyness with being effective?
I don't know if it's been misidentified as much as it's certainly part of our focus now. This idea that, yes, you can be busy every minute of the day, but that doesn't necessarily mean you're being productive, nor does it mean your position is profitable for the firm. So we've got to always remember this is a business. It has to run like a business. And as much as I like you, I have to hold you accountable to the metrics, just as you would hold me accountable for having a place where everyone is working towards a common goal.
So as you've identified some places where maybe we're misaligned or we need to work on intentionality or accountability, I want to talk a little bit about what does redefining success for this season really look like for you? So what are the small intentional changes that you intend on implementing in 2026 that you think will really move the needle with productivity and efficiency?
Well, start with a fun one that's not directly related to productivity, but
is this the You Move one?
It is You Move.
I knew it. You're so excited about this.
You Move, oddly spelled YUMUUV, is a platform that does something that we have done kind of on an ad hoc basis in the past, which is set up fitness goals. And so when we were smaller, it was easier to set up fitness goals. Everyone participated, whether it's a step challenge or any other fitness goal. But as we grew, we realized what we were doing, which was a lot of manual data tracking and self-reporting, didn't really work. So it kind of fell off for a few years. And then we realized, hey, there are platforms out there that will sync with your wearables and really allow for larger teams to easily jump on board. And it's completely voluntary, but we have a very good cohort of our team members who are participating in this. And this month it's a step competition. And I love seeing people, at the proverbial water cooler or getting coffee in the morning, and they're talking about how many steps they got and who's going to get more steps. And a couple of our team members have half marathons and marathons coming up, and how that's going to skew the numbers. And, it's motivated me to get up in the morning and get on the Peloton more days than not. And I've even got a treadmill under my desk now. So
it came out of its box?
It came out of the box.
Oh, it's
It was only in the box for 2 days. But, it's I got a standing desk. So it's exciting to see that kind of progress. But the more serious progress that we've talked about is, again, this theme of accountability. And it starts from the top down. We have talked to our division leads and we'll continue to talk to our division leads about how much involvement and communication it takes to really stay on top of where is the energy going, right? We have a group of very hardworking people. But again, the question is, are you moving the needle? Is this something that benefits the firm, or are we just filling our days with work for the sake of work and the fact that we're here? So just being more intentional about that and increasing the pace of when we're talking about our metrics and whether or not we're meeting our metrics, and then pivoting accordingly.
Well, and I love that you found a way to identify some measure of success or progress that isn't tied to hours or revenue, right? I mean, you're talking about physical wellness, emotional wellness, things that benefit the team, as individuals and as a whole. And I got to say, the idea behind the You Move competition, and you talk about the competitive nature of the team and how excited they are about their steps and who's going to win, is the prize at the end, what you've called pantry preference.
That's right.
Which I think is a brilliant idea. And I don't know how many firms out there have access to food on demand and drinks on demand, but this firm does. I mean, we've got a stacked pantry, stacked refrigerators, whatever you could possibly want or need. And at some point with 70 plus people, it gets a little out of hand with the specific requests for, I need dehydrated seaweed in the pantry to be happy here. And so the idea behind the You Move competition was the team that wins gets pantry preference for that month.
That's right. That's right.
So then that team gets to pick whatever the pantry is filled with for that month. And of course, we have our staples of coffee, water, energy drinks, the lunch meats, the important things. But for those really wild one-offs, you've done two things. You've encouraged the team to be more physically active and engaged and competitive, while simultaneously, hypothetically reducing your pantry budget and making it look like a reward.
It's been a lot of fun just coming up with this, because we took something that people loved, which is the pantry.
The unlimited food and beverage.
That's right. And you're absolutely right. It got a little unwieldy. It's not so much for me about cost savings, and I'm not suggesting there will be cost savings. That really is not the goal, but it became extremely unwieldy. So if
just complex to order so many things for so many people all the time.
Well, yes, because if you wanted purple blow pops, and
we have those.
Exactly. Someone requested them and they got here. So we realized for the folks who are doing the ordering across 4 offices, filling these pantries became I'm placing 12 orders a month problem for them. And so we wanted to have Pantry Basics, which is nearly 50 items. I mean, it's well stocked.
And I thought that was a really fascinating process too. And I know we're getting slightly into the weeds here, but you had AI run a report on all of our Amazon, Instacart, DoorDash purchases over the last year and come up with the 50 most requested items. And those became our Pantry Basics.
Absolutely. So we fed our Instacart orders and our shopping Slack thread, which was incredibly long, into AI and said, give us the top 50 items. And that became our basic order. So without question, those are stocked across our offices. But the preference is so much fun because now and they're so competitive about this. Now the winning team gets to decide, okay, well, what other items are we getting? And
there's some bartering going on behind the scenes.
So I hear. So the logistics of placing these orders becomes much easier.
Yeah.
And it's a lot of fun. All of our team is having fun, right? You could arguably look at this and say, well, maybe now I don't get my orange blow pops, but it has been the exact opposite. I'm not a fan, so I don't know. But even if it's your favorite energy drink, right?
Sure.
You can pick what you want. It's become a really fun thing for the firm to do. So,
well, I think it's a good example of a small change that can have huge impact. So let's flip it. What's something that, even if it is small, that if you don't change this year, would affect you greatly, professionally or personally?
Well, as much as we joke about it, the fitness aspect of it is certainly intentional, right? When we fell off the map in terms of, as a group, encouraging physical activity, and really all we have is a unlimited pantry, what is the message we're sending, right? Especially when we're talking about people that get here early, they work late, and they are in their offices, right? You've got to change the messaging and set a better example so that folks can come to work, be productive, but you want them to be productive for a long time, not just this year and burn out. And being supportive of people's needs. We have a very flexible environment where people can take the appointments they need, right? If you need to talk to someone,
personal appointments, you mean?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And just being open to that. I think all of that is intentional and something that we said we need to change this so that there are not negative ramifications in years.
With the idea that consistency of small changes is going to beat the intensity of one big change anytime.
Right. And bigger picture, we know too many attorneys who have sadly taken their own lives. We know too many attorneys who have become alcoholics or fallen into some other vice, right? It's a very high stress environment. Sure. And if we're not intentional about these things, then it will over time wear on you.
Well, and that kind of shifts, I think, seamlessly into the next part of our conversation, which is really about how do we in 2026 get away from what I think a lot of attorneys fall into by default, which is a task-based existence of these things I have to do. These are the deadlines by which I have to do them. And by doing them in the right way and, under an efficient, timeline, I'm good at what I do, which I identify with as being successful. We've talked about wanting to move from like kind of a task-based existence into an identity-based growth, which really talks about the best resolution you can have is choosing intentionality over autopilot. So to that end, who do you need to become this year to accomplish the goals you want to achieve, as opposed to what are the things you need to do to accomplish those goals? So tell us a little bit about what are some things about yourself that you want to progress in personally in terms of your strengths in order to achieve professionally?
This is something I would tell any attorney, but it's certainly true of myself. We are sometimes taught that our work product is enough. Mm-hmm. If I have excellent work product, then people will know me and like me and my business will grow. But the reality is you have to be intentional about relationships and you have to be out there developing business, meeting people, developing relationships. And that's hard when your time is also how you earn, right? But it's necessary. To put it another way, an attorney who works for us who handles $100,000 worth of business versus an attorney who works for us who brought in $100,000 worth of business, at the end of the year are going to have very different conversations about what's their raise going to look like? What does their bonus look like? The ability to build business, whether you're an owner or a first-year lawyer, is exceptionally valuable and too often overlooked, right? We just say, I'm going to be the best attorney I can be in terms of my work product. But there's so much more to creating value for yourself and for your firm. And frankly, it's an opportunity to, again, get away from your desk for a little bit and make the most of that time.
Well, I think it's interesting. A lot of people would pigeonhole themselves into, that's not my skill set, right? My skill set is not conversation. It's not relationship. I'm not a social person. I don't enjoy going to networking events. I really just want to come in, do my work, and I want to leave. What would you say to those people?
Well, as an introvert who sometimes pretends
You're like,
as
one of those people, let me tell you what I'd
sometimes pretends to be an extrovert, I will tell you intentionality is really what matters, right? And that could be you're at a bar or social event, not like a place
not a drinking bar.
Yes,
we
yes.
understand. It is a lawyer podcast.
But finding one or two people to have a conversation with that is meaningful. And I am guilty of, particularly as a young lawyer, when I was talking to one person, there's some part of me that's still scanning the room, asking myself, am I supposed to be talking to someone else that I can't miss?
That's more important. Yeah.
That's more important, or that I'm not supposed to miss at this event, right? But then what am I doing? It's taking away from the conversation I'm having. Let's say you can't bring yourself to go to those events, and there are plenty of people who will be in that category. Being intentional about the relationships you have also go a long way. So this idea that on the way to work, you could just pick a number from your phone, call that person and talk to them for 5 minutes goes a long way, right?
Yeah.
I was thinking about you. How are you doing? And I am the last person.
I don't know that you've ever done that.
to do that. But it is so effective, right?
Yeah.
And the idea is not I'm calling this person to get a referral. The idea is I'm going to invest into these relationships, even in small but meaningful ways, so that should something ever come up, yes, they will think of me. Right. But I've also developed a greater network and a greater influence in people who are just thinking about me generally.
Well, and I think, a takeaway, and I heard this recently at a summit I was at, and they were talking about the intentionality of relationships and relationship building and how that really gets you into the right room at the right time because relationships are ongoing, right? The relationships that you invest in are ever present. And so when the opportunity arises, you're there. And so they gave some advice on how to kind of curate the intentional relationship. And obviously, these things have to be genuine. This isn't something that you can just say, you know what, as part of my business development, I'm going to make some calls today, say hi to a few people and move on. Like at some level, you do need to care about who you're speaking with. But some of the tips they talked about how you set yourself apart relationally for someone you want to be in a professional or personal relationship with is when you talk to them, it's not just how are you? It is a compliment to something they're doing that really stands out to you, or a consoling, right? Something that they need maybe some support in or some assistance with, or it's an encouragement. And those things, when you think about things people have said to you that stood out, things that you've remembered, it usually has nothing to do with your work. People say you're a great lawyer all the time. Benson, you're brilliant. Oh, you're so good at tech. You're a great marketer. Look at all these things you've done. Look how successful you are. But the things that you remember are when somebody pulls you aside and says, hey, man, I just really look up to the way that you are parenting those boys, right? And I just wanted you to know that. I just wanted you to know that the way you talk to them and the way you lead and the strength that you carry in their presence is so noticed and so necessary. And I just wanted to encourage you in that. And there's ways to make that connection where you're now long lasting, going to remember that conversation, as opposed to just another, hey, how are you? Good job being a lawyer, man. Proud of your success. Like those are different conversations.
Yeah, no, absolutely they are. And the thought that goes into that genuine connection and the time that you're taking to tell them that is really meaningful, right? And I think we're all guilty of when someone says, hey, how are you? To say, great, how are you? But it's an opportunity, right? It's an opportunity to connect a little more intentionally.
Yeah. Well, and in talking about intentionality, is there a hard conversation that you've been avoiding going into this year? Something that you're not quite ready to tackle or to face?
That's a tough question because I tend to
steamroll any adversarial situation?
No, I tend to address issues as they come up, mostly because it's harder for me to hold on to something for days or weeks than to address it, right? Whenever there's an issue, I'd like to address it the same day, even more than addressing it the next day, right?
Well, and I've always said you're like the fastest to apologize. And it may not be because the situation is resolved, but you are ready to move on.
Oh, I'm always ready to move on. And I think as we joked about in an earlier podcast, it's impossible for me to wake up angry. Mm-hmm. So I think
it's over. It's over. We've all moved on. Right. It's happy and positive today.
Right. So yes, I generally don't hold on to things to even the next day.
So we've talked a bit about small decisions that have big impact, and we've talked about intentionality and relationships. What are some small changes that would have immediate impact? If somebody was looking for, man, I hear you, but I just don't have time to say, I'll do these things consistently and in 9 months, I'm going to see a return. I need some good news now. Is there anything that people could be doing in their practices, professionally or personally, that you think would have an immediate impact?
I'm very data driven. So for me, the best piece of advice I could give someone is document what you're doing. Document what you're doing with your time. If you're talking about fitness, document what you're eating and your metrics, because that gives you a place to start from. And for example, if you're looking for short-term wins, well, where am I spending most of my time? You'll see that in blocks. And then, is this actually productive, right? Again, there are things that we can all spend hours on, right? But when you're in leadership, part of that question is there something in this list that I can delegate? Mm-hmm. And that takes some intentionality. First, look at what you have on your plate.
Well, and some relinquishment of control to a certain extent.
Absolutely. I was listening to an attorney who has offices all across the country. And one of the things he said is, once I find someone I can trust a little bit, I start delegating just without mitigation. And I keep giving them more. When you find a person that you can trust to deliver results, mm-hmm. continue to delegate. And so for a leader, and we had to learn this, finding people to delegate to and then continually delegating them. You should ask yourself that question regularly. What can I take off of my plate? I'm doing it today. I'm saying, of these tasks, how many of them really need my attention? I think that's your quickest win.
Well, and as we kind of start to wrap up, you've identified time as your most valuable asset. And we are in complete agreement on that. And what it means to identify people who you can delegate to and really start to delegate, start the process. So is there something that's on your desk right now that should be delegated that you haven't yet?
This is arguably could be delegated. I'm going to make a list. Hold on. Yes, arguably could be delegated. But one of the things I've realized is I probably need a digital avatar of myself that can do some talking head videos, particularly when, for example, you're doing a walkthrough of Loft, mm-hmm. right? And so because I'm a nerd, I have cloned my voice and I'm very happy with the voice clone. And I've been prompting AI to create my video clone, which, yes, we have people who only do video content who are probably going to be...
You have a whole marketing team that could probably put this together for you.
Yes. So I nerded out on that a little bit. It could have been delegated. But particularly when things are on the cutting edge, in other words, not that many people have digital avatars that are talking head videos on YouTube yet. So sometimes I'll take on things that are just exciting because you're on the cutting edge, although I could have delegated that.
That's mostly because it's fun for you.
It is fun. Yeah.
Well, as we kind of close out of episode 7, new year, new you. If we get to the end of 2026 and this one thing has changed, you would deem it a successful year, what would that be?
Well, of course, we have some financial goals for the firm. And if we met those goals, I would consider it to be very successful. And we have goals for how our firm is going to grow. But for me, it's really also a personal journey of taking advantage of the fact that we're on the YouMove platform and everyone's invigorated to focus on fitness. And if I get to the end of the year and I can look back at the metrics that I started the year, those benchmarks, and say I've done better, then I'm going to be proud of myself.
Well, and mine is just if our, tomorrow 4-year-old gets into pre-K.
That would be a big win, yes.
And we've got all the kids in big boy school. That would be a huge win for 2026. But, small goals. We got to start somewhere.
All the boys in the same school with the same schedules would be life-changing.
Well, that's it for episode 7. Thank you, Benson. Appreciate it. You guys don't forget to subscribe, and we look forward to seeing you next time.